Alrighty, so just to go over the highlights of what we're going to be talking about during this briefing, we'll start seeing rain chances increase locally tonight and into tomorrow, associated with the ahead of and with the remnants of Hurricane Helene. With that, we're looking at isolated instances of flash flooding and a few brief tornadoes possible. Saturday looks relatively quiet, but then some low-end rain chances return on Sunday into early next week. And we are still dealing with minor coastal flooding, especially in the middle and upper Chesapeake Bay. And of course, we still have some small craft advisories going on with our coastal waters, and we'll be looking at expanding those into the bay for tomorrow. Just an update on where we stand with Hurricane Helene. It is a Category 2, and latest max winds with that are 105 miles an hour. You can see it has quite the expansive wind field there in the Gulf. It's forecast to make landfall later tonight and then quickly progress north. And the center of it's still expected to stay well to the west. But of course, impacts go well outside the cone, and we'll be talking about that here in just a moment. Throughout this briefing, since these impacts do expand across the state of Virginia, I'm mostly going to be talking about local impacts, but I will touch briefly on stuff going on across the state, and the graphics will cover those as well. There are flood watches just to our west due to the rainfall expected and the rainfall that's already happened. Also, there is a high wind watch in the southwest of the state, expecting those winds to really start ramping up later today and into tomorrow. Just an overview of the weather pattern for this week. So in this top left corner here, you can see Hurricane Helene in the Gulf, as well as a slowly approaching front to the northwest of the area. And those two will interact to bring us some rain and some gusty winds through tomorrow. Then drying out for Saturday, but then some lingering frontal systems near the coast will bring us some low-end chances of rain early next week. And then once we get to the middle of next week, it looks like things will start drying out as high pressure builds in. I do want to go over that we have already seen some rain in the state over the last 48 hours or so, especially in the southwest part of the state. They've already seen quite a bit of rain, and so with more rain coming, that could really mean some issues for flooding. But here locally, we've seen in our southern portions of the area, we're looking around an inch in a lot of spots, and then locally higher up there, closer to 2.5 inches. But for as far as heavy rainfall going forward, here locally, we should start seeing some of that rainfall going into tomorrow, especially picking up tomorrow morning. Locally, we do just have a marginal risk of flooding, so isolated instances of flash flooding, but that slight risk, the scattered flash floods possible, that's just to our west. And then, of course, not looking at local impacts for Saturday. This is our rainfall forecast. Over the next few days, we're looking widespread, 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches locally, with some higher amounts possible, up to around 2.5 inches. And then just to our west, forecast is calling for more in the ballpark of 2 to 4 inches with those locally higher amounts. I do want to go over the reasonable worst case scenario. Locally, that would be around 2 inches to up near 3 inches. And then out to the west, it's looking like a reasonable worst case scenario would be around 5 to 6 inches of rain. Moving on to the wind forecast, these winds should really start to pick up early tomorrow morning and continue into the afternoon. Here in the Wakefield forecast area, We're forecasting wind gusts around 20 to 25 miles an hour. And then to the west, they're looking at values potentially as high as 50 miles an hour in the southwest corner of the state. And I also have a reasonable worst case wind gust as well. Definitely can't rule out wind gusts closer to 40 miles an hour in central Virginia tomorrow. Moving on to the severe thunderstorm potential. Today is just a general thunder. Not expecting severe weather locally today, but then tomorrow morning, the severe potential does increase across southern parts of Virginia. We've got a marginal risk for severe weather, and then in North Carolina, just to the south there's a slight risk. The primary threats with this would be a few brief tornadoes and damaging wind gusts, and then we're clear for severe weather on Saturday. I'll pause on this slide for just a second, but this is just an overview of the weather for the next week, the max temperatures and probability of precip. You can see those highest rain chances over the next several days are really limited to Friday morning and the first part of Friday afternoon. And our warmest day is probably looking like Saturday with highs in the low to mid 80s. The marine threats are next here. You'll see we've got ongoing period of small craft conditions, that elevated risk level in the coastal waters, and then that spreads to the bay and the rivers tomorrow. As far as forecast specifics, max wind gusts tomorrow looking at 25, maybe up to close near 30 knots. And for waves, we're looking at the 5 to 7 range in the coastal waters and 2 to 3 feet in the bay. And these peak gusts would be late tonight through tomorrow. And then I'll pause on this for a second so you can look at a more detailed look of those winds over the next few days and the waves over the next few days. As you can see where that timing is really picking up early Friday morning and into the evening, and then dying back for Saturday or for late Friday night into Saturday morning. And then we are still dealing with some tidal flooding. It's mostly limited to the middle and upper Chesapeake Bay, and then just some nuisance stuff elsewhere. And that'll continue for the next several tide cycles. And I do have the tidal graphs here for the upper bay, looking at about 1 foot to 1.5 feet of inundation near those waterfront areas that are prone to flooding. And then rip currents, we still have high rip current risk for today and tomorrow. Saturday, it looks like that high rip current risk will continue on the eastern shore for Saturday and probably Sunday as well. But for Sunday, we're looking at least a moderate risk for all of our beaches. And then looking ahead to next week, it's looking like near normal temperatures and precip. So we're probably looking around, probably looking at the 70s for temperatures since we're looking at near normal. With that, that's all I have. So I can move on to questions. Should I stop recording?